Welcome back, everyone. This is Benji with Swift English here. So today we're going to take a look at TOEFL reading summary prose questions, or we call them, summary questions for short. It's just easier to remember that way. Anyway, there's a few things you need to be aware of before we get into, the techniques, approaches, strategies, tips, and so on. Okay, so first of all, these are the final questions you normally encounter in the TOEFL reading passages. So on the actual exam, there'll be question number 10, not question number 14, because the current version of the exam is going to be shorter than this. You're just going to receive 10 questions per passage. Now, something you want to really pay attention to here is that these question types are actually worth 2 points, not 1 point. And in order to receive full credit, the 2 points, you have to be able to get all 3 answer options right. They have to be correct. If you only get 2 of them right out of the 3, then you're only going to receive 1 point, unfortunately. So, take a little bit of time, but not too much time. And, really try to apply the strategies and tips I'm going to give you here, and it'll really increase your chances of getting all 3 of them. Okay, so without further ado, let's take a look at the overall approach here. Okay, so when it comes to this question type, before you get into the actual strategies, you should already know what the directions are about. So like sentence highlight questions or sentence insertion questions, you should already be familiar with this because 1, it'll save you time. 2, it'll save you energy. And finally, you're going to feel a little bit less stressed out. You're going to feel a little bit more relaxed going into this. Okay, so these are the directions. So an introductory sentence for a brief summary of the passage is provided below. What do they mean? They mean this. So they gave you an intro sentence or a topic sentence to warm you up. Complete the summary by selecting the 3 answer choices that express the most important ideas in the passage. So 3 of the 6 answer choices they have here, A, B, C, D, E, and F. So 3 of these 6 have the main ideas. What are the main ideas, guys? The most essential information. So the most important ideas that were expressed, that were stated, that were mentioned in the passage. Keep that in mind, the 3 main ideas. So some sentences do not belong in the summary. Here they're going to talk about the traps, the incorrect information. Because why? They express ideas, they state ideas that are not presented in the passage. So maybe they're off topic or they're not even mentioned at all. Those are incorrect or are minor ideas in the passage. So maybe they actually are expressed or stated in the passage, but they're not a big deal. They're not the main, ideas. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Like, what is a main idea? How can we differentiate this from a minor idea? We'll get into that in just a few minutes. Now, another thing I should point out is another reason why it could be an incorrect answer choice is because maybe the information is just inaccurate, okay? So they took words from just different paragraphs or the passage, but they kind of changed, the original meaning, okay? They modified some of the content and it's just wrong. So it could be opposite information or something else. So for whatever reason, it's just inaccurate. All right. So pay attention to that as well. So let's begin. So step 1, be familiar with the title. It should kind of be about this. It shouldn't be like, so if you have American railroads here, for instance, it's probably not going to be about like American airplanes or something like that. Okay. Kind of common sense, but a lot of people don't know. Then you want to read this sentence really quickly. That'll also kind of, ease you in. All right, it'll give you some background knowledge, some context based on what you just read earlier in the passage. Now you got to pick 3 of these. Okay, so one thing you could do if you're struggling a lot with these, this might seem counterintuitive at first, but it'll really increase your odds of getting the 3 right ones. That is, try to eliminate the 3 wrong ones if you can. It's not a bad idea to do that. Because if you try to figure out the 3 correct ones, you might get 2 out of 3 right sometimes. And that's because what happens to a lot of test takers, they end up accidentally selecting the minor idea instead of the major idea. So, or the main idea, I should say. So just be aware of that. If you can figure out why they're wrong, then you'll be left with the 3 right answers, and it's just a faster strategy. But doing this with you, I'll apply both of them actually at the same time to show it is possible. Okay, so choice A, increased rail line between the East and Midwest, resulted in the rapid rise of major Midwestern cities such as Chicago. Okay, so normally what they do is they'll have a piece of information that's paraphrased here that was based on the text, the passage, and this could be kind of taken from a random question or a random paragraph, or it could be part of the answer to a random question. And the second part here could be from a different question or a different paragraph or a different answer to another question. So that can happen sometimes, guys. Or sometimes you might have like one long sentence, but it's just related to one question or like one answer, That's possible too. So they could either both be main ideas or they could both even be incorrect information. So it doesn't really matter. Anyway, this bit right here, I remember from question 1. So like in question 1, they asked me, what effect did the expansion of rail links have on Chicago? And I remember also the answer to this question was like Chicago was transformed from a village into a large city. So if I kind of remember the questions they asked me early on, and if I remember the answers to them, I'm going to do really well here, guys. Okay. So try to remember, whatever they ask you in questions 1 through 9, the ones preceding the summary questions. And the other thing I want to mention is detailed factual questions, inference questions, rhetorical purpose questions. A lot of these contain, those main ideas. Vocab questions sometimes, sentence highlight questions sometimes, they could be helpful as well as sentence simplification. So really depends on the passage you have. Okay, so this part here, as well as is like and in the growth of small towns along railroad routes. So I believe that's like in question 4 or 5. Yeah, it was in question 5. I just remember that from memory. They used Montana, Illinois as an example of that. And like that first sentence in that paragraph I had to read and to decide what the answer to this question was when I was reading this really helped me grasp that information, and I was able to also recall that this was a main idea based on that question 5. Okay, and the answer to it. All right, so choice A is a main idea. So now what you would do, we don't have it here on this site, but you would drag this in a box for the correct choices. Okay, so choice B, and if you're not certain about this, it's okay. You could come back. You don't have to put it in the box right away. All right, so once Chicago became a major commercial hub with direct rail connections to New Orleans and the East, Midwestern farmers were no longer limited to selling most of their products locally. Okay, so before I even actually read this entire sentence, when I did this myself originally, when I ran into New Orleans, this Southern American city in Louisiana, I kind of told myself this is a huge red flag. Okay, why? I never encountered this city in any of the questions, so huge red flag. Another red flag, I didn't encounter this city in the correct answer options either. So if that's the case, probably it's a minor idea, or could be something not mentioned, or it could be something you don't remember. So again, it could be a minor idea here. And Midwestern farmers, again, very specific details, kind of difficult for me to recall this information. We're no longer limited to selling most of their products locally. So already I'm kind of leaning to saying that this is not a main idea, okay? And if you have like a piece of paper, it's not a bad idea to actually take notes on this final question of the reading portion of the exam. So if you think choice B is wrong, write B and write an X through it. So at least you kind of eliminate it. All right, and it'll help you, remember your right choices and your wrong ones. Okay, so choice D, real estate speculation. So right off the bat, again, when I run into this phrase here, real estate or real estate speculation, I didn't really have any questions on that. I didn't remember that at all. It doesn't, yeah, so again, it has to be about American railroads, but this I don't remember. And I don't even remember this being an answer to any of my questions. So right away, guys, boom, in like a second, I realized that this is an incorrect answer choice. Could be a minor idea, maybe it wasn't even mentioned, in the paragraph or the passage, whatever. So yeah, okay, now choice D, state government financing of railroads. So already I feel positive about this, huge plus sign, because I had a question about state government. And yeah, I remember they did discuss the financing of railroads largely ended in the 1830s. So there was like an answer relating to this as well. And there was another question about the private investors and how they supported financing the railroads. So just to show you, that was, so the first part of that answer choice or answer option from the summary question was here. How were railroads affected by the economic depression in the late 1830s? And yeah, I remember the answer to that question was they lost funding. They lost that support, financial support from the state government. So if I remember that from memory, it's going to help me get, the main idea. And I also remember like question 9, how they talk about private investment and how they ended up supporting the railroad network. Okay. So both parts of this answer choice kind of helped me, realize that this is indeed a main idea. So we put A in the box, we put D in the box, we eliminated B and C, we kind of crossed those out with our pencil on our, scratch piece of computer paper. Now you're down to E and F. So whenever this happens to you, again, if you want to save time, try to figure out which one's incorrect. That's just the fastest strategy. So when I see like both canals and railroads, already red flag keyword canals here. So why? Because I didn't have any questions about canals asked from me. And the other thing is canals wasn't part of any of the correct answer choices either. So if that's the case, it's either a minor idea or something that wasn't really discussed in the passage. So boom, it's eliminated, we're done. And I didn't even bother reading the rest of it. But of course, just to be on the safe side, read the rest of it. It might help you, give you further context and clues. Choice F, let's just take a look at it, even though we know it's the right answer via process of elimination. In the 1850s, railroads turned to investment banks in New York City for capital to expand and by doing so, help establish the city as da-da-da. Okay, so I did remember I had a question about investment banks. It was really late in the passage. I believe it's question 11. Yeah, it was a not accept question and it had investment bankers here. And I remember how they helped fund the railroads. They were instrumental in that when like state government could no longer, support them. So yeah, this would help me get the right answer. And even if you don't remember like some specific details like New York City, maybe you did read it, but you can't really recall that. It's kind of vague for you. That's okay. The very fact that you remember investment banks was mentioned in one of the questions can kind of give it away that it's a main idea, unlike, the canals mentioned in choice E, option E. Okay. And yeah, you can see A, D, and F were our right answers, and we would put those in the box. Let's take a look at another one. Okay. So yeah, you already should know the directions. You should be familiar with that. So, okay. So tip 1, the achievement of Brazilian independence should be closely related to this. It shouldn't be off topic like British independence or something else. So it was only after the Portuguese court. So step 2, read the intro sentence they give you. So it was only after the Portuguese court moved to Brazil that significant, important progress toward Brazilian independence began. Okay. Yeah, I remember that from the reading. Choice A, major conspiracies against Portuguese dominance developed in regions where governmental control over Brazil's economy had produced a spirit of revolt among Brazilian merchants. I actually do remember this in one of the questions. There was something closely related to this. But what I don't like about this question is the conspiracies they mentioned in the passage didn't really lead to the revolution. Actually, most of them were crushed. Most, if not all of them at the time. So that's kind of a red flag. They didn't really help achieve the independence. So It didn't contribute to that. And the other thing is, yeah, conspiracies is really specific. Another thing that was kind of specific too, really detailed, was Brazilian merchants. I actually kind of vaguely remembered that the revolts, the conspiracies, involved Brazilian people, from what I recall. So merchants is so specific that that's a huge red flag, okay? So it's either a minor idea or a little bit off topic, or maybe incorrect information. Maybe they didn't mention merchants. They just said ordinary Brazilian people from all kinds of, backgrounds. So I don't feel good about choice A. Choice B, the presence of King João and his court in Rio de Janeiro created competition and tension with Portuguese elites born in Brazil. Okay, before I even finish the rest of the sentence, the very fact that I encountered Portuguese elites born in Brazil tells me this is an incorrect answer option. It's not a main idea because I didn't even have a single question referring to Portuguese elites born in Brazil. So huge red flag. This was kind of more obvious than this one where they did mention something about conspiracies in the question. So this is eliminated too. Choice C, King João effectively freed Brazil from Portugal's political and economic control. I don't remember which question it was or where I read it, but I did remember them discussing this kind of many times. So that is the main idea. If that's happening, if there's this reoccurring pattern that you're encountering in questions or in the answers, the correct answers to the questions, or like somewhere in the paragraphs that you're reading, you'll know that's a main idea then. And so another bit of information, in 1850 elevated Brazil to the legal status of a kingdom co-equal with Portugal. So from memory, I kind of remembered that I might have had one or two questions related to this piece of information that were synonymous with this or a paraphrase of this. And I remember like one of them was actually a sentence insertion question, if I'm not mistaken, related to this. So right off the bat, I know that this is a correct answer choice. Now, if you're not sure, you can always, go back to the questions, kind of read them really quick, but it does, waste time. So try your best to pay attention to them the first time around. It'll be better in terms of saving time. Okay, so choice D, after the Portuguese Revolution in 1820, Portugal attempted to reestablish control over Brazil. That's true. I do remember that. There was a detailed factual question about this. But although King João returned to Lisbon, Pedro, his son and heir, remained in Brazil. Yeah, and also remember King João, insisted that his son stay in Brazil and become the ruler of this nation, okay? So yeah, there was another question related to this. So already from memory, I know choice D is a correct answer option. So I'll, put it in the box. Now, E and F. Okay, so after freeing itself from Portuguese control, Brazil almost immediately fell under the control of England. So England's the red flag here. First of all, they were talking about like Portugal and Brazil's relationship most of the time, like 90% of the time. There was like a piece of information about England in one of the incorrect answer choices. And yeah, there was also information about it in one of the paragraphs I read. Really, like it was just like one or two lines, tops. So even assuming if this information is true, it's just a minor idea, guys, okay? It's not a major idea. They didn't really discuss this in full detail in the passage, and it wasn't in any of the questions, nor was it the correct answer to any of the questions. So yeah, this would be eliminated. And let's just double check F. In 1822, Dom Pedro refused Portugal's demand that he return. Declared, okay, that's true, I do remember that. Declared Brazil's independence. I did remember a detailed factual question near the end related to this. And by the year's end had become constitutional emperor of an independent Brazil. And I remember another question actually related to this. I don't remember if it was detailed factual, but yeah, it was related to this fact right here. So yeah, you would know that C, D, and F would be your correct answer options. And of course, on the actual exam, there's no answer key. You got to figure it out. All right. So let's take a look at one final one. This is a science passage. Those two were histories. So let's see. You already know the directions. So Pay attention to the title, Overkill of the North American Fauna. So it's about the extinction of these mighty animals, these huge animals. Many of them were mammals and some of them were even birds too. So about 11,000 years ago, that's step 2. All of North America's megafauna became extinct. Yeah, and this is even closely related to the title and the entire passage. So we need 3 main ideas that support this. Okay, so that the first humans migrated to North America near the same time as the extinctions of the megafauna has led many to believe that hunting by humans was a significant cause, a major cause of those extinctions. That's true, and this was a super easy one because they really discussed this throughout many of the questions. So there was bits of the questions that kind of revealed this information. A lot of answers were actually related to this choice, and just going through reading these different paragraphs, I remember like that they were kind of reiterating this over and over and over again, just in different words sometimes. All right, so yeah, A would go in the basket, so drag and drop. Choice B, support for the hypothesis that hunting by humans caused the extinction has been provided by computer models. Yeah, I actually had 2 questions related to the computer models. So they kind of introduced some kind of scenario involving these computer simulations. And they had another subsequent paragraph that kind of involved the figures they used to make a prediction about humans, potentially human hunters, wiping out the megafauna. All right. And yeah, and this part here was related to a different question I encountered. So there's like a detailed factual or maybe an inference question that was related to, the discovery of some mammoths remains, like their fossils, near human settlements. I remember that too. So B is a main idea, drop in the box, drag and drop. So, okay, interesting. We know that A and B are correct answers. So this one will probably finish really quickly. You might even get this under a minute. It's not going to necessarily take you 2 minutes or 3 minutes to answer all the summary questions. I've seen some people do this in 45 seconds. I've experienced this myself as well. But everybody's going to be different. So, we kind of process language at different rates too. So keep that in mind. There's more evidence that human settlers hunted large flightless birds like the moa into extinction than there is that hunters caused the extinction of large mammals like the mammoth. Okay, so this one was kind of interesting because I do remember them mentioning the moa in one of the paragraphs, but the thing that makes me suspicious with choice C is more evidence. So anytime they're kind of modifying some of the content mentioned in the passage or paragraphs, so when they say more of something or less of something, when they're making such an assertion, just be aware of that. It's kind of sometimes difficult to remember this information as well. And you have to be really certain that they did actually explicitly mention this. So this could be like a false comparison or just a false fact, so just be aware of it. But I didn't remember any questions about moa. Maybe there was one, but I don't remember. So we'll come back to this one. But the thing that makes me suspicious about it is more evidence that human settlers hunted large flightless birds like the moa into extinction than there is that hunters caused this. So anytime they have these comparisons, most of the time they're false comparisons. And those are usually trap answers. Not always, but 90-95% of the time they use them as traps. Okay, because they're very specific, hard to remember, so keep that in mind. Choice D, early North Americans, known as Clovis Society, developed spears. Okay, I didn't really have any questions about them developing spears, so red flag there. In order to hunt large animals to feed their population. So in order to do this, okay, as it expanded across vast areas of the continent. I remember they were talking about the possibility of them entering the Americas and wiping out these animals. They were really talking about this theory, this hypothesis, but they didn't really ask any questions about the spears. So when something's this specific, it's either a minor idea or it could be off topic or not even, talked about. So yeah, I don't feel good about choice D. It's probably wrong. not a main idea. Now, choice E and F. So scientists have proven that human hunters of large animals who migrated across North America grew in numbers so quickly that they killed off most of the megafauna within 100 years. Okay, this sounds good. It's kind of related to what we read about in this passage, but the problem I have with choice E is have proven. This is extreme language. So guys, when you encounter words like always, never, forever, have proven, or something like it's impossible, or whatever, it's just some extreme like language like this, usually those are trap answers like 90-95% of the time. So eliminate those, don't select those unless you know for sure that they've mentioned that somewhere. Okay, so choice F is the right answer, but I want to explain why. Some scholars argue that the evidence linking mammoth remains to human settlements is insufficient, so it's not enough to determine that hunting by humans was a significant factor, like an important one, in the megafauna extinctions. Yeah, so there was 2 or 3 questions related to this topic. And there was one specific question where they introduced a specific researcher or scientist that explained like the evidence that they found was insufficient in determining this, because there was one site where they found a few megafauna fossils of the woolly mammoth, but they need to have a certain amount of those fossils or remains to use it as concrete evidence. Whereas in a different site, they found some ancient bird related to like an ostrich. It was like a wingless bird. I think it was, I forgot the name, but that site there had lots of remains, lots of fossils. So they said, hey, this paucity of evidence, this limited evidence that they had related to the mammoth is not good proof, for this claim that, humans wiped them out. Maybe, that was due to weather-related cause or something. But the other site, they found tons of fossils and remains. So that's why that scholar, didn't like that piece of evidence that they used. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. So this was the summary question, or also known as Prose summary. So if you did like it, do obviously hit like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.